Political reaction to that. Is the federal government doing enough to help struggling soldiers? And is a stigma a barrier to getting help? Joining me now, Jack Harris, the NDP defence critic, and Joyce Murray, the Liberal defence critic. Folks, I tell you this every day, and believe me, we're trying to get answers why. We always invite a Conservative, and we invite all parties to come to give their perspectives. We did invite a Conservative on today. None were made available. We'll try to find out why. I know many of you are asking, but I just want to make sure we do ask. We want to cover these issues. We're trying to cover them fairly. If no one's made available, we still have to go ahead and cover this issue. Let me start with you, Mr. Harris. The Ombudsman, Pierre Degla, just told me too many soldiers are falling through the cracks. They feel like they're, quote, being pushed off a cliff. What's your reaction to what he had to say?
Well, first of all, I want to thank the defense, the CF and Defence Ombudsman for that extremely comprehensive statement about the issues and problems. No particular of this is very new. He's testified before the Defence Committee. But what we've got is a situation, and he's explained why. We have soldiers who have been treated by this government as, I guess, part of their political messaging. We support our troops. They're in Afghanistan. They're fighting. We defend our military and our soldiers. And yet they're feeling that they're being abandoned by this government. It's no real surprise that the government hasn't put a representative forward today. It's a shameful story of what is being felt more and more as abandonment. And I can go into all the details of the things that Mr. Degg talked about, but the reality is, as he pointed out, even the goal of 447 mental health workers, which was devised back in 2002 as the ideal number, flatlined in 2010 at 378. We've got reports saying that in 2010 only 1/3 of CF members with substance abuse issues were receiving treatment. So we've got a whole series of a failure of the Canadian Forces to look after the very people who has been praising and getting political mileage out of during the Afghanistan war. And now we're in a situation where that's over. And the soldiers are feeling that they're abandoned. And the details are many and various, but that's the real problem.
All right, Joyce Murray, your reaction to what he had to say, the Ombudsman, and also maybe if the House Defence Committee will look at how PTSD and other programs are being taken care of and treated.
Well, Evan, we are in the middle of a study on ill and injured soldiers, and we will continue with that study and have some tough recommendations that I hope the Conservatives will not whitewash out of the report, which happens. But I want to first thank Mr. Daigle for his service as the Ombudsman for National Defence. He was very clear today in his testimony, but he's done a lot of work to point out what needs to be done better, because the serving men and women have been treated in a shabby and unfeeling way. I mean, essentially, they are being blamed for not stepping forward. Jack, myself, others have been saying, look at the consequences when they do step forward to ask for help. And so it was painted very clearly that for 9 out of 10, that is a pathway out of the forces, whether they like it or not, and that has to change.
All right, let me hold you for a second there. I want to get to another issue. We talked about PTSD. I do remind our audience we invited a member of the government to come on. None were made available. But there's a breaking story now from our colleague Rob Gordon out in Halifax. And I want to throw to a piece that Rob's doing right now on a situation about military procurement and, of course, about submarines. Here's Rob Gordon.
HMCS Windsor is about to return to the place it knows best, out of the water and under repair. After a brief stint at sea, the second-hand sub is destined for a costly and long engine job. CBC News has learned the Navy is about to pull HMCS Windsor out of service for at least 7 months, maybe as long as a year, all to fix a broken engine. And this after a 5-year, $209 million refit. The Navy confirms Windsor will be hauled from the water in March, back on the same dock it launched from less than 2 years ago. The sub was scheduled to be on active service till 2018, but the $209 million refit missed its faulty mission-critical engine. It could take a year and millions of dollars to fix. Here's why. Windsor's 2 engines were designed for British trains. It's easy to pull an engine from a train, not so easy to remove an 8-ton engine from a submarine. The Windsor has a special hatch to remove the engines, but that might not work. The solution, says a Navy source, cut the submarine in half and remove the engine. Even then, there could be trouble. The Navy's version of the Paxman Valenta engine isn't made anymore. Remember those British trains? The Navy might have to scavenge an engine from a scrap train. Windsor was operating on reduced duties after its 5-year refit. It's forbidden to venture far from shore because of its broken engine. And in a few weeks, the hobbled sub will be landlocked again, this time for up to a year. And that leaves East Coast Canada with no submarines at all. Rob Gordon, CBC News, Halifax.
All right, that's Rob Gordon. More trouble for Canada's subs. Let me bring back our defence MPs. NDP Defence Critic Jack Harris, Liberal Defence Critic Joyce Murray. No Conservative made available on this story either. Jack Harris, pulling HMCS Windsor from service for at least 7 months or a year because of a broken engine. This after the 5-year, $209 million refit. The Minister of Defence was out earlier today about a new procurement defence strategy. Time to procure new subs?
Well, you know, it's ironic that it's today that this story comes out when we're looking at a whole new defense procurement strategy. This is a procurement strategy or procurement decision made back in the 90s by the Liberals when they were in power. You know, it's been a disaster, frankly, for the government. The actual acquisition of these obviously didn't come with any warranties or guarantees. They took them as is. It's very disturbing to know that, first of all, that 5-year refit that took place was actually cost 4 times as much as it was initially expected to cost. And here we have a situation where 18 months later she's out of service again. This engine, by the way, is really just charges up the batteries because this is a diesel electric submarine. It's an engine that charges batteries and then the submarine runs on batteries as part of its power system. But you know, we have made a bad deal on this, but we've got a bad history and bad reputation for all the procurement issues that have been going on. And frankly, today's announcement doesn't give us a lot of.
Why not? What's wrong with today's announcement? Isn't this? Well, I mean, what they're trying to do is set up a special committee that would take care of procurements rather than putting it in the hands of one ministry.
Well, that's part of the problem, is that there have been so many hands in this. Now we've got 4 ministers involved in this, and there's no indication as to how this is actually going to work. Some of the ideas are nice, and I think, you know, we would certainly agree with an industrial strategy with respect to using the defence procurement activities to ensure that we have, you know, industrial benefits. That's something that hasn't been done in Canada really for the past 30 years, so at least the idea is good. The implementation of it, that really remains to be seen, because now we've got 4 ministers in the same pot. We don't really know who's in charge. I asked the defence minister to tell us how it's going to be better. He didn't even answer. The answer was given by Diane Finlay, the Minister of Public Works. So
let me get Joyce Murray in on this. I mean, obviously your reaction to the submarines, and maybe if these kind of procurement issues might be fixed by the announcement today.
Yeah, no, I would. My reaction when I heard about that was, oops, especially after all the money that was down the toilet with the Conservatives retrofit with that piece of equipment, that important sub, actually.
I mean, just to be fair, you know, the oops could go on the Liberals. Oops, we bought those used subs.
Well, I think it's time that we move past decisions that were made 15, 20 years ago, and that this government actually takes some responsibility for their economic and financial mismanagement.
Right. Although, to be fair, we're still paying for that decision. You know, taxpayers are still paying for a decision that was 15 years ago.
So the retrofit is something that this government mismanaged, and it cost 4 to 5 times as much as it should have. What happened today, Evan, is for the first time I actually heard both ministers essentially say we've failed, because they have failed to deliver. This has been 8 lost years in terms of military equipment procurement, and it has just been a litany of problems. So with their announcement that they would have another layer of complexity and more ministers involved, I hope that they do a better job, because it's costly. We've lost jobs. It's costly to economic opportunities, and it's really costly to the armed force members who are not able to utilize equipment that is safe and is effective for them. So let's hope they do a better job, but there's nothing to suggest that having more ministers' hands in the pot and another layer of bureaucracy is actually going to lead us there.
All right, I got to leave it there. Joyce Murray and Jack Harris, I appreciate your time today. A reminder, The third time we asked a Conservative to join us. You know, listen, our mandate is to be fair to all sides. None were made available. We still feel it's important to talk about and discuss this issue. Thanks so much.
Thank you.